Welcome to Night Lesson. Relax and learn along the way. Ecosystems, the web of life. A soothing journey through the world of ecology. A night lesson for falling asleep. Welcome to the Night Lesson. Settle in comfortably, close your eyes, and allow me to guide you on a soothing journey through the fascinating world of ecosystems. Tonight, we will explore the invisible web that connects all life on Earth, from the smallest bacteria to the largest whales, from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains. An ecosystem is more than just a collection of living things. It is a complex interplay of life and the environment, an endless dance of energy and matter that has been going on for billions of years. As you relax and find stillness, we will discover together how everything is connected to everything else. Breathe calmly and evenly. Let the thoughts of the day drift away. Nature knows no hurry. Everything happens in its own right rhythm, in perfect balance. And so, our journey begins. The word ecosystem is composed of the Greek oikos for household and systema for combination. It describes a natural space where living beings and their non-living environment form a functional unit. This definition may sound abstract, but the reality is beautifully simple. Imagine a quiet forest lake. The water itself is not alive, yet it hosts countless life forms. Algae float on the surface. Small crustaceans filter the water. Fish glide through the depths. Reeds and rushes grow on the shore. Dragonflies hover over the water. Frogs call in the twilight. All these living things, plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, together with the water, the sunlight, the minerals in the soil, the air, and the temperature, form an ecosystem. Every element plays a role. The sun provides energy. The algae convert this energy into organic matter. Small animals eat the algae. Larger animals eat the smaller ones. Bacteria decompose dead organisms and return nutrients to the water. The cycle closes. Nothing is wasted. Everything has its place. The size of an ecosystem is not fixed. A decaying tree stump in the forest is an ecosystem, a microcosm of fungi, insects, bacteria, and the wood structure itself. At the same time, the entire forest is an ecosystem. And on an even grander scale, the entire Earth, with all its living creatures and its atmosphere, forms a single, gigantic ecosystem, the biosphere. This Russian doll of systems within systems shows us something important. Everything is connected. No living being exists in isolation. Every animal, every plant, every microorganism is part of a larger whole, dependent on others and important to others. In every ecosystem, two types of factors work together, biotic and abiotic. The biotic factors are the living components, all plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms. The abiotic factors are the non-living components, sunlight, temperature, water, air, soil, minerals. Let's begin with light. The sun is the source of energy for almost all life on Earth. Photosynthesis, the process by which plants convert sunlight into chemical energy, is the foundation of most ecosystems. Without sunlight, there would be no green plants. Without plants, there would be no plant-eating animals. Without herbivores, no carnivores. The chain of life begins with a photon of light. The intensity of light varies with the time of day, the season, and the geographical location. In equatorial rainforests, the light shines for an almost constant 12 hours a day, all year round. In polar regions, there is continuous light for months in summer and total darkness in winter. Every ecosystem is adapted to its light conditions. Temperature is another critical abiotic factor. It influences the speed of chemical reactions in living organisms. Enzymes function optimally only within specific temperature ranges. Too cold, and metabolism slows to a halt. Too hot, and proteins denature, the cellular structures break down. Most organisms can only survive in a relatively narrow temperature range. Yet, there is life in the most extreme conditions. Bacteria live in hot springs at over 90 degrees Celsius. Other microorganisms remain active in the Antarctic cold at minus 50 degrees. Life finds a way. Water is perhaps the most important abiotic factor. All known life requires water. Cells consist of 70 to 90% water. Biochemical reactions take place in aqueous solutions. Water transports nutrients, regulates temperature, dissolves minerals. The availability of water fundamentally shapes ecosystems. Rainforests arise where it rains abundantly. Deserts exist where water is scarce. Between these extremes lie savannas, steppes, tundras, each adapted to its specific precipitation patterns. The soil is the foundation of terrestrial ecosystems. It stores water and nutrients, provides support for roots, and harbors countless microorganisms. A single teaspoon of healthy forest soil contains more organisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, tiny worms, single-celled organisms. The composition of the soil, its pH, its texture, its nutrient content, determines which plants can grow there. And the plants, in turn, determine which animals can live there. The soil is not just a substrate. It is a living system in itself. Energy and matter flow through ecosystems in the form of food. This flow can be simplified as a food chain. But the reality is more complex and beautiful, a food web in which everything is connected to everything else. Every food chain begins with the producers. These are usually green plants that convert sunlight into organic molecules through photosynthesis. A blade of grass in a meadow takes carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil. With the help of solar energy, it combines them into sugar, glucose. Energy is now stored in the molecular bonds of this sugar, chemical energy that originally came from the sun. The blade of grass grows. Its cells divide. It produces more organic matter. This biomass is available for the next level, the primary consumers or herbivores. A grasshopper lands on the blade of grass. It chews the leaf. The cellulose is broken down in its digestive system. The glucose is absorbed, entering the grasshopper's cells. There, it is oxidized in the mitochondria, respired. In this process, the stored energy is released, which the grasshopper uses for movement, growth, and reproduction. But only a fraction of the energy that was in the grass is used by the grasshopper. Much is lost as heat. A part is excreted, undigested. Of the original solar energy that the blade of grass captured, perhaps only 10% is available to the grasshopper. The grasshopper itself becomes prey. A bird, a secondary consumer, a carnivore, snatches it in flight. The bird digests the grasshopper, using its organic matter. Again, energy is lost. Again, only about 10% is passed on. A bird of prey, a tertiary consumer, preys on the smaller bird. Another level, even less energy. With each step in the food chain, the available energy decreases. That is why there are many plants, fewer herbivores, even fewer carnivores, and very few top predators. This energy pyramid is a fundamental principle of ecology. It explains why a forest can support thousands of trees, hundreds of deer, but only a handful of wolves. But food chains are too linear, too simplistic. In reality, the feeding relationships form a complex web. The grasshopper doesn't just eat grass, but also herbs. The bird doesn't just eat grasshoppers, but also worms, beetles, berries. The bird of prey doesn't just hunt this one bird, but also mice, lizards, other birds. Everything is interwoven. A web, not a chain. And this web has an amazing property: stability through complexity. If one species disappears, others can partially take over its role. The system is resilient. But this resilience has its limits. Remove too many threads from the web, and it begins to tear. Not all relationships between living beings are about eating or being eaten. Many of the most fascinating connections in nature are partnerships, symbioses, where species work together, help each other, and survive together. The word symbiosis comes from the Greek for living together. It describes the close cohabitation of different species. Some of these relationships are so close, so fundamental, that the partners could not survive without each other. Let's begin with mutualism, partnerships where both sides benefit. A classic example is the relationship between bees and flowering plants. The bee visits the flower in search of nectar, a sweet, energy-rich liquid. As it drinks, it touches the flower's stamens. Pollen sticks to its furry body. The bee flies on to the next flower, unwittingly transferring the pollen. The flower is pollinated. It can now produce seeds and reproduce. The bee gets food. The plant gets a pollination service. Both win. This partnership is so old and so successful that both partners have adapted to each other over the course of evolution. Flowers have developed colors, scents, and shapes that attract bees. Bees have developed special body structures, pollen baskets on their legs, long tongues for deep flower corollas. In tropical coral reefs, we find another remarkable symbiosis. Clownfish live among the venomous tentacles of sea anemones. Most fish would be paralyzed and eaten by the venom, but the clownfish is immune. It has developed a mucus layer that protects it. For the clownfish, the anemone is a safe home. Predators dare not venture between the tentacles, but the anemone also benefits. The clownfish defends it against predators like butterfly fish. It cleans it of parasites. Its movements improve water circulation, and its waste provides nutrients. Even more fascinating are the symbioses that occur on a microscopic level. In your own gut live trillions of bacteria, the microbiome. These bacteria are not parasites. They are partners. They help you digest food that you couldn't process on your own. They produce vitamins. They train your immune system. They protect you from harmful bacteria simply by occupying the space. In return, they receive a warm, nutrient-rich home. Without these bacterial partners, you could not survive. They are so fundamental to your biology that scientists sometimes speak of a holobiot, a superorganism of human and microbiome together. Some symbioses have led to the emergence of entirely new life forms. The mitochondria in your cells, the powerhouses that produce ADP, were once independent bacteria. About 2 billion years ago, they were engulfed by a larger cell. But instead of being digested, they remained alive. The bacteria received protection and nutrients. The host cell received an efficient energy generator. This partnership was so advantageous that they were never separated again. Over billions of years and countless generations, the bacteria became an integrated part of the cell. Today, mitochondria still have their own DNA, an echo of their bacterial past. Every cell in your body is the result of this ancient symbiosis. You are a walking testament to the power of cooperation. Chloroplasts and plant cells have a similar history. They, too, were once independent photosynthetic bacteria that were taken into a larger cell. Through this symbiosis, plants were able to emerge, and with them, the basis for almost all complex life on Earth. Not all symbioses are so balanced. In commensalism, one partner benefits while the other experiences neither benefit nor harm. An example is epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants without parasitizing them. In tropical rainforests, orchids and bromeliads grow on the branches of large trees. They use the tree as support to get closer to the light, but they do not draw any nutrients from it. The tree is hardly affected by their presence. And then there is parasitism, a form of symbiosis where one partner benefits and the other is harmed. A tapeworm in its host's intestine absorbs nutrients that are lost to the host. A mistletoe taps into its host tree's water transport system. Parasitism may seem negative, but parasites also play important roles in ecosystems. They regulate the populations of their hosts. They drive evolution. Hosts develop defenses, parasites develop new strategies. It is an endless arms race that shapes both sides. Symbioses show us that nature is not only shaped by competition. Cooperation, partnership, and mutual dependence are just as fundamental. Life is a web of connections. No one is truly alone. Energy flows through ecosystems, but it only flows in one direction. From the sun to the producers, to the consumers, and finally as heat back into the universe. Energy is not recycled. It flows through the system and then leaves it. Every day, the sun sends unimaginable amounts of energy to the earth. A tiny fraction of this energy, less than 1%, is captured by plants through photosynthesis. Most solar radiation is reflected or absorbed as heat, but this tiny fraction is enough. It powers all life on Earth. In the chloroplasts of plant cells, light energy is converted into high-energy chemical bonds. From carbon dioxide and water, sugar and oxygen are created. The equation is elegant. 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 6 molecules of water plus light energy yields 1 molecule of glucose plus 6 molecules of oxygen. This glucose is the fuel of life. Plants use it for growth, building cellulose for cell walls, starch for energy storage, proteins for enzymes. Animals that eat plants use this stored energy, and animals that eat other animals use it indirectly. In every cell of every organism, energetic processes are constantly running. Cellular respiration, the counterpart to photosynthesis, burns glucose with oxygen, releasing energy in the process. This energy is used to produce ADP, adenosine triphosphate, the universal energy currency of life. With ADP, cells can work. Muscles contract. Nerve signals are transmitted. Molecules are synthesized. Cells divide. Life happens. But with every energy transfer, something is lost. The second law of thermodynamics also applies in ecosystems. Entropy increases. Or more simply, in every energy conversion, a part is released as heat, which can no longer be used for biological work. That is why the flow of energy is unidirectional. Heat is released into the environment, rises, and leaves the system. New energy must constantly be supplied by the sun. Life is not a closed system. It is a flow-through system, dependent on an external energy source. This dependence makes it clear how precious and fragile life is. Without the sun, without the continuous flow of energy, everything would come to a standstill. Temperatures would drop. Chemical reactions would cease. Life would be extinguished. But the sun shines reliably. It has for 4.5 billion years. And it will continue to shine for another 5 billion years. In this span of time, life on Earth has had the opportunity to develop, to diversify, to colonize every corner of the planet. While energy flows in only one direction, matter is recycled within the ecosystem. The atoms that make up your body, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, are ancient. They have passed through countless other life forms. They are recycled again and again in endless cycles. The carbon cycle is perhaps the best known. Carbon is the backbone of organic molecules. Every cell, every protein, every piece of DNA contains carbon. Plants take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Through photosynthesis, they incorporate it into glucose. Atmospheric carbon becomes plant carbon. Animals eat the plants. The plant carbon becomes animal carbon. When organisms breathe, they oxidize organic molecules. In this process, carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere. When organisms die, bacteria and fungi decompose their bodies. This also releases carbon dioxide. The cycle closes. However, some carbon is stored long-term. Dead plants sink to the bottom of lakes and oceans. Under pressure and without oxygen, they turn into coal, oil, and gas over millions of years. This fossil carbon was removed from the cycle until humans began to release it again. The nitrogen cycle is more complex. Nitrogen is essential for proteins and DNA. The atmosphere is 78% nitrogen, But most organisms cannot use this gaseous nitrogen. This is where specialized bacteria come in. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria, often in symbiosis with plants like peas or clover, convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia. This ammonia is taken up by plants and incorporated into amino acids. When animals eat the plants, they use these amino acids for their own proteins. When animals produce waste or die, bacteria decompose the organic nitrogen compounds back into ammonia, then to nitrite, then to nitrate. Other bacteria, denitrifying bacteria, convert nitrate back into gaseous nitrogen, which escapes into the atmosphere. The cycle is complete. Nitrogen travels from the air to the soil, into plants, into animals, into microorganisms, and back into the air. The water cycle connects all of the Earth's ecosystems. Water evaporates from oceans, lakes, rivers, and the ground. It rises as water vapor into the atmosphere. There, it cools and condenses into clouds. It falls back to Earth as rain or snow. Some of the water seeps into the ground and is absorbed by plant roots. Plants transport it to their leaves, where it evaporates again through tiny openings, stomata. This process, transpiration, is an important part of the cycle. Animals drink water, use it in their metabolism, and excrete it. Streams collect water, become rivers, and flow into the sea. From there, it evaporates again. The cycle has no beginning and no end. These cycles of matter show the fundamental sustainability of nature. Nothing is wasted. Every atom is reused. Life is a perfect recycling system. The Earth is home to an incredible diversity of life forms. Scientists have described about 2 million species, but the actual number could be 10 million or more. This diversity, biodiversity, is not evenly distributed. Tropical rainforests cover only about 6% of the Earth's land area, but are home to more than half of all known species. A single hectare of rainforest in South America can contain more tree species than all of Europe. The diversity is breathtaking. Why are there so many species? Why does diversity evolve? The answer lies in evolution and the ecological niche. Each species has a unique ecological niche, its role in the ecosystem, its way of living, feeding, and reproducing. Two species cannot permanently occupy the same niche. One will displace the other. This is known as the competitive exclusion principle. But in a complex ecosystem, there are countless niches. Different plants use different wavelengths of light. They grow at different heights, at different times of the year. Different animals eat different parts of plants, leaves, seeds, fruits, roots, nectar. This niche differentiation allows for coexistence. Many species can live in the same ecosystem because each has its own niche, its own way of making a living. Biodiversity has an intrinsic value. Each species is unique, the result of millions of years of evolution. Its loss is irreversible. But biodiversity also has practical importance for ecosystems. Diverse ecosystems are more stable. If one species fails, others can take over its role. This redundancy provides insurance against disturbances. A forest with 100 tree species is more resilient to pests than a monoculture. Diverse ecosystems are more productive. Different species use resources in different ways. Together, they use the available resources more efficiently than a single species could. Diversity promotes diversity. In a species-rich ecosystem, there are more interactions, more opportunities for specialization, more niches. It is a self-reinforcing process. But this diversity is under threat. The current extinction rate is 100 to 1,000 times higher than the natural background rate. We are experiencing the sixth great mass extinction in Earth's history, caused not by an asteroid impact or volcanic activity, but by a single species, humans. Beneath the surface, hidden in the darkness of the soil, exists a world of astonishing complexity. A universe in miniature, populated by billions of organisms, crisscrossed by a network of fine threads. the realm of fungi and microorganisms. We have already encountered soil as an abiotic factor, but it is far more than just an inanimate substrate. The soil itself is an ecosystem, perhaps the most productive and densely populated on Earth. 1 gram of healthy forest soil, hardly more than a thimbleful, contains several billion bacteria, several meters of fungal filaments, thousands of protozoa, and hundreds of tiny worms and arthropods. These organisms are the silent workers that make life on the surface possible. At the center of this underground network are the fungi. While we usually perceive fungi as fruiting bodies, the mushrooms or toadstools that sprout from the ground, the actual organism consists of a fine network of threads, the mycelium. These mycelia permeate the soil like a three-dimensional web. A single fungal mycelium can extend over several square kilometers. In Oregon, an armillaria fungus was discovered whose mycelium covers nearly 9 square kilometers and is estimated to be several thousand years old. It is one of the largest and oldest known organisms on Earth. But the real magic lies in the symbiosis between fungi and plants, the mycorrhiza. About 90% of all land plants enter into this partnership. The fungal threads envelop or penetrate the plant roots, extending their reach by 100 to 1,000 times. Through this network, the plant receives water and nutrients, especially phosphorus and nitrogen, that the fine fungal threads can filter from the soil. In return, the plant supplies the fungus with sugars from photosynthesis. Up to 30% of the carbon that a tree gains through photosynthesis travels into this underground network. Even more fascinating, these mycorrhizal networks connect different plants to each other. A tree is not only connected to its own fungal partners, but, through them, to other trees, even trees of other species. Through this wood wide web, as it is sometimes called, plants can exchange resources. A large, old tree with deep roots and plenty of access to water can supply young seedlings in the shade, which cannot yet photosynthesize enough on their own, via the fungal network. Scientists have observed carbon flowing from one tree to another. How mother trees, large, old trees in the forest, nurture their offspring. How trees, before dying, release nutrients to their neighbors. There is even evidence that plants can communicate through this network. When a plant is attacked by insects, it can send out chemical signals. These signals are transported through the fungal network to other plants, which then ramp up their defenses, even before they are attacked themselves. The mycelial network is also an information superhighway, an internet of nature. Besides fungi, bacteria play a fundamental role. They decompose organic material, recycle nutrients, and fix nitrogen from the air. They live in symbiosis with plant roots, in the digestive systems of animals, on every surface. The diversity of soil bacteria is overwhelming. A handful of soil can contain thousands of different bacterial species, many of which have never been scientifically described. Each has its niche, its specialization. Earthworms are the engineers of this underground world. They eat organic material and soil, digest it, and excrete it as nutrient-rich worm castings. This humus is exceptionally fertile. Through their burrowing activity, earthworms aerate the soil, creating channels for water and air. They mix the layers, pulling organic material from the surface into deeper areas. Charles Darwin estimated that earthworms could produce a 10-centimeter thick layer of fertile soil in 30 years. All these organisms, fungi, bacteria, worms, mites, springtails, protozoa, together form the soil biology. They transform dead organic matter into humus, into plant-available nutrients, into fertile soil. Without them, there would be no forests, no meadows, no agriculture. Life on the surface rests on the invisible life under the ground. The next time you walk through a forest, across a meadow, remember, beneath every step exists a complex, living network, a hidden world, silent and patient, that makes the visible life possible. The Earth is a planet of contrasts, with an astonishing variety of ecosystems. Each is uniquely adapted to its specific environmental conditions. Let us visit some of these fascinating habitats. Let's start in the tropical rainforest. Here, consistently warm temperatures and high rainfall prevail throughout the year. The result is explosive productivity. Plants grow in layers. Tall trees form the canopy. Below it, an understory of smaller trees and shrubs, and on the ground, ferns and mosses. Life is concentrated in the canopy, 30 to 40 meters above the ground. This is where the light is. This is where the trees bloom. This is where monkeys, colorful birds, and countless insects live. It is a world unto itself, high above the dark forest floor. Interestingly, the soils of tropical rainforests are poor in nutrients. The entire biomass, all the nutrients, are locked up in the living vegetation. When a leaf falls, it is decomposed by fungi and insects within weeks. The nutrients are immediately taken up again by roots. The cycle is extremely fast and efficient. Now let's travel to temperate deciduous forests. Here, there are seasons: warm summers, cold winters. The trees, oaks, beeches, maples, shed their leaves in the autumn. This layer of leaves decomposes more slowly than in the rainforest. It forms a thick layer of humus, making the soil fertile. In the spring, the forest awakens. Before the trees unfold their leaves, spring ephemerals, wood anemones, lesser celandine, take advantage of the light on the forest floor. They bloom, produce seeds, and retreat before the canopy closes. The temperate deciduous forest is home to fewer species than the rainforest, but it is still rich in life. Deer, wild boar, foxes, squirrels, woodpeckers, owls, songbirds, beetles, butterflies, spiders, and in the soil, a whole universe of microorganisms. Further north, where winters become longer and colder, coniferous forests, the taiga, dominate. Pines, spruces, and firs keep their needles all year round. This adaptation minimizes water loss in the frozen winter and allows for photosynthesis as soon as it's warm enough. The taiga is the largest terrestrial biome on Earth, a vast green belt stretching across North America, Europe, and Asia. The number of species is lower than in temperate forests, but the number of individuals can be high. Huge herds of reindeer migrate through the taiga. Wolves, bears, and lynxes hunt here. In regions with little rainfall, grasslands emerge. Savannas in the tropics, steppes in temperate zones, prairies in North America. Trees are rare, grasses dominate. These ecosystems are surprisingly productive. Grasses grow quickly and recover rapidly from grazing or fire. Grasslands support large herds of herbivores. In the African savanna, millions of wildebeest, zebras, and gazelles migrate. Elephants and giraffes. And following them are lions, cheetahs, and hyenas. Deserts are the most extreme terrestrial ecosystems. Less than 25 centimeters of rain per year. Huge temperature fluctuations between day and night. And yet, there is life. Desert plants have amazing adaptations. Cacti store water in their thickened stems. Their leaves are reduced to thorns to minimize evaporation. Many desert plants have deep roots that reach groundwater. Others bloom only after rare rainfalls, quickly produce seeds, and then die. Desert animals are mostly nocturnal, avoiding the heat of the day. Kangaroo rats can survive their entire lives without drinking. They get water from the metabolism of their food. Desert lizards and snakes are perfectly adapted to the extreme conditions. Aquatic ecosystems are just as diverse. Oceans cover over 70% of the Earth's surface. They produce about half of the oxygen in the atmosphere, mainly through tiny photosynthetic organisms, the phytoplankton. Coral reefs, although they cover only a tiny fraction of the oceans, are home to about a quarter of all marine species. They are the tropical rainforests of the seas, oases of biodiversity in the nutrient-poor tropical oceans. In the deep sea, where no sunlight penetrates, life is based not on photosynthesis, but on chemosynthesis. Bacteria at hydrothermal vents use chemical energy from volcanic processes, a completely different basis for life, an alternative biochemistry. Freshwater ecosystems, rivers, lakes, wetlands, cover only about 1% of the Earth's surface, but are home to about 10% of all known species. They are hotspots of biodiversity, vital for countless species, including humans. Each of these ecosystems is unique, beautiful, perfectly adapted to its environment. Together, they form the complex, living mosaic of our planet. In the sea, invisible to the naked eye, drifts a world of tiny organisms. Plankton, from the Greek planktos for wandering. They cannot actively swim against currents. They let themselves drift with the waves, with the tides. But their role in the Earth's ecosystems is anything but passive. There are two main groups: phytoplankton, the plant-like drifters, and zooplankton, the animal-like ones. Phytoplankton are microscopic photosynthetic organisms, single-celled algae, cyanobacteria, diatoms. They float in the surface layers of the water where light penetrates. There, they capture sunlight and perform photosynthesis, just like land plants. These tiny organisms produce about 50% of the oxygen in our atmosphere. Every second breath you take comes not from forests or meadows, but from the plankton in the sea. The productivity of phytoplankton is astonishing. In nutrient-rich areas, where cold, deep currents bring minerals to the surface, phytoplankton populations explode. The water turns green or brown from the billions of tiny cells. These algal blooms can be seen from space. Phytoplankton is the base of marine food webs. Zooplankton, small crustaceans, larvae, jellyfish, feed on phytoplankton. These zooplanktons are eaten by small fish. The fish are eaten by larger fish, birds, seals, and whales. All life in the sea, from the smallest sardine to the largest blue whale, is ultimately dependent on these microscopic drifters. A particularly fascinating member of the zooplankton is krill, small, shrimp-like crustaceans. In the cold waters of the Antarctic, they form huge swarms. A single swarm can span several cubic kilometers and contain millions of tons of krill. These krill swarms are the main food for many Antarctic species. Penguins dive and snatch them. Seals hunt them. And blue whales, the largest animals that have ever lived, filter several tons of krill from the water every day. It is remarkable. The largest animal on Earth feeds on one of the smallest. The blue whale, over 30 meters long and weighing over 150 tons, depends on centimeter-sized crustaceans. The food chain has only two steps. Phytoplankton is eaten by krill. Krill is eaten by whales. So short, so efficient. Plankton also undertakes the largest animal migration on Earth, not horizontally, but vertically. Every day, in oceans worldwide, zooplankton rise from the depths to the surface at night to feed on phytoplankton. At dawn, they sink back down into the darkness, where they are safer from predators. This vertical migration sometimes covers several hundred meters, and it involves billions of organisms simultaneously. The total biomass that migrates up and down daily is so large that it can be detected by sonar. Some plankton organisms are bioluminescent. They glow when disturbed. At night, when waves break or a boat plows through the water, glowing eddies and sparks appear in the water. This magical light comes from dinoflagellates, single-celled algae that emit blue light when agitated. The biological purpose of this bioluminescence is likely defense. The sudden flash of light startles predators or makes them visible to their own predators. Plankton also plays a crucial role in the global carbon cycle. Phytoplankton takes up carbon dioxide from the seawater, and thus indirectly from the atmosphere. A portion of this carbon is converted into organic matter through photosynthesis. When plankton organisms die, they sink into the deep. This marine snow transports carbon from the surface layer to the deep sea, where it can be stored for centuries or millennia. This process, the biological carbon pump, has regulated the carbon dioxide content of the atmosphere over geological time. Without plankton, the Earth would be a completely different planet. Less oxygen in the atmosphere, less life in the oceans, a different climate. These tiny, drifting organisms are fundamental to the biosphere. They are invisible, yet their impact is global. They are small, yet together they are giants. Every habitat presents specific challenges: extreme temperatures, water scarcity or abundance, predators, competition. Over the course of evolution, organisms have developed astonishing adaptations, anatomical, physiological, and behavioral, that enable them to survive. Let's start in the desert. Here, water is the limiting resource. Cacti have developed a solution that is as elegant as it is effective. Their leaves are reduced to spines. This minimizes the surface area for evaporation. Photosynthesis occurs in the green, thickened stem, which functions like a water tank. After a rare rain, cacti can absorb and store large amounts of water. A large saguaro cactus can store several tons of water. Its outer skin is waxy and waterproof. Its stomata open only at night, when evaporation is minimal. Other desert plants have different strategies. Creosote bushes secrete chemicals that prevent other plants from germinating nearby. This reduces competition for the scarce water. Some desert flowers exist for most of the year only as seeds. After a rain, they germinate within days, bloom, produce seeds, and die, all in a few weeks. Desert animals have equally remarkable adaptations. The kangaroo rat, which lives in North American deserts, never drinks. It obtains all the water it needs from the metabolism of its food, dry seeds. Its kidneys are extremely efficient, producing highly concentrated urine. It is nocturnal, spending the hot day in cool burrows. Desert foxes like the fennec have enormous ears. These are not just for hearing, but also for heat regulation. The large, highly vascularized ears radiate heat, helping the animal to cool down. At the opposite extreme, in polar regions, cold is the challenge. Penguins in the Antarctic have several layers of adaptation. Their plumage is extremely dense, about 100 feathers per square centimeter. Beneath it is a thick layer of fat for insulation. Their body shape is compact, minimizing the surface area relative to volume. Less surface area means less heat loss. Emperor penguins survive Antarctic winters at -40 degrees and colder. The males incubate the eggs, standing for months without food in the darkness. They huddle together in dense groups, each individual taking turns in the warm center and on the cold edge. Through this social cooperation, they survive the impossible. Polar bears have transparent, hollow hairs. Sunlight is guided through the hairs to the black skin, where it is absorbed as heat. Under the skin lies a 10-centimeter thick layer of fat. Polar bears are so well insulated that they radiate almost no heat. Infrared cameras can barely detect them. Camouflage and mimicry are other fascinating adaptations. Leaf insects look exactly like leaves, with veins, brown chew marks, even small mold spots. When they don't move, they are virtually invisible. Stick insects mimic twigs. Some species even have small thorns and bumps that imitate buds. They move extremely slowly, swaying like a twig in the wind. Butterflies use various strategies. Some are conspicuously colored, a warning signal. They are toxic or taste bad. Predators learn to avoid these patterns. Other, harmless butterflies mimic the warning pattern. They benefit from the protection without being toxic themselves. This is mimicry. Chameleons are famous for their ability to change color. For a long time, it was thought this was only for camouflage. In fact, they use color change mainly for communication and temperature regulation. Light colors reflect sunlight, dark colors absorb it. By changing color, they can regulate their body temperature. Behavioral adaptations are just as important as anatomical ones. Migratory birds fly thousands of kilometers to follow the seasons, to always be where food is available. Arctic terns hold the record. They fly annually from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back, over 40,000 kilometers. How do they navigate? Through an interplay of senses. They orient themselves by the sun, by stars, by the Earth's magnetic field. Some birds even have magnetic receptors in their eyes. They can literally see the Earth's magnetic field. Hibernation is an adaptation to food scarcity in winter. Marmots lower their body temperature to a few degrees above zero. Their heart rate slows from 100 beats per minute to 5. They breathe only a few times per minute. In this state of torpor, they survive for months without food. All these adaptations are the result of natural selection. Organisms with advantageous traits are more likely to survive and reproduce. Over generations, these traits accumulate. Over millions of years, perfectly adapted organisms emerge. The diversity of adaptations shows the creativity of evolution. There is not one solution for every problem. There are countless solutions, each unique, each elegant. Life always finds a way. In every ecosystem, there are species whose influence far exceeds their numbers. They are like the keystone in an arch. If you remove them, the entire structure collapses. Scientists call them keystone species. The term comes from the ecologist Robert Payne. In the 1960s, he studied tide pools on the Pacific coast. He systematically removed sea stars from some pools and observed the consequences. The sea stars were predators that fed mainly on mussels. Without the sea stars, the mussel populations exploded. They overgrew the rocks, displacing algae, barnacles, and other organisms. The species diversity plummeted dramatically. The sea star had played a disproportionate role. Although not particularly numerous, its predation kept the mussel population in check. This allowed other species to exist. It was the keystone of the system. Since then, many other keystone species have been identified. The beaver is a classic example. By felling trees and building dams, it transforms entire landscapes. A beaver dam impounds a stream. A pond is created. The water level rises. Floodplains emerge. These new wetlands provide habitat for countless species that could not otherwise live here. Frogs spawn in the still water. Dragonflies patrol the surface. Ducks dabble in the shallow pond. Herons stalk the shore. Fish find shelter and food. Even moose benefit. They eat the aquatic plants that now grow. The beaver has not just inhabited the ecosystem. It has created, shaped, and structured it. It is an ecosystem engineer. In African savannas, elephants play a similar role. They eat several hundred kilograms of plant material daily. In doing so, they fell trees, break branches, and trample shrubs. This may seem destructive, but it actually prevents the savanna from becoming dense woodland. The open grasslands that feed millions of wildebeest, zebras, and gazelles exist in part because elephants push back the tree vegetation. Elephants also dig for water. In the dry season, they dig holes in dried-up riverbeds, reaching groundwater. These waterholes are used by many other species, from birds and antelopes to predators. Without elephants, some animals would not survive the dry season. In the sea otters are a keystone species. They live in kelp forests along the North American Pacific coast. Their main food is sea urchins. Sea urchins eat kelp, large brown algae that can grow up to 50 meters tall. These kelp forests are oases of biodiversity, habitat for fish, crustaceans, and countless invertebrates. When sea otters were nearly wiped out for their fur in the 19th century, sea urchin populations exploded. They grazed down the kelp forests. Where dense forests of algae once stood, only barren rocks remained, urchin barrens. When sea otters were placed under protection and their populations recovered, the kelp forests also returned. With them came biodiversity. The sea otter, by controlling the sea urchins, enables the entire ecosystem. Some keystone species are surprisingly small. Fig trees in tropical rainforests bear fruit all year round, at times when other trees have no fruit. These figs feed birds, monkeys, and bats during the lean season. Without fig trees, many fruit-eating species would not survive the lean months. The fig tree, though just one of thousands of tree species in the rainforest, is indispensable. The concept of the keystone species shows us ecosystems are not democratic systems where every species is equally important. Some species have a disproportionate influence. Their loss has cascading effects. This has important consequences for conservation. We must not only pay attention to species numbers, but to which species are being lost. The loss of a keystone species can destabilize an entire ecosystem. The good news is, the reintroduction or protection of a single keystone species can restore an entire ecosystem. One species can make all the difference. Ecosystems strive for equilibrium. Populations fluctuate, but within limits. Nutrients circulate. Energy flows. The system regulates itself. This balance is dynamic, not static, a constant process of adjusting and balancing. Let's consider the predator-prey relationship. When the population of prey animals, say, hares, increases, predators, lynxes, have more to eat. Their population also grows. More lynxes mean more hunting pressure on the hares. The hare population declines. With less prey, the lynxes cannot find enough to eat. Their population also declines. With fewer predators, the hares recover. The cycle begins anew. These oscillations are characteristic of predator-prey systems. They can be observed over decades. The classic example is the lynx and snowshoe hare in Canada, whose population data from fur trade records go back over 100 years. Competition is another regulatory mechanism. When two species compete for the same resource, both populations will remain below their maximum level. This competitive pressure can lead to specialization. The species evolve apart, occupying different niches, thus reducing the overlap. Parasites and diseases also play an important role. They keep populations in check. When a population becomes too dense, diseases spread more easily. Weak individuals are eliminated. The population becomes more robust. Even disasters have a role. Forest fires destroy, but they also rejuvenate. Many plants have adapted to fire. Some seeds only germinate after a fire. The ash fertilizes the soil. New vegetation sprouts, young and productive. Succession is the process by which ecosystems recover or develop anew after disturbances. Primary succession begins on bare rock or lava. Lichens are the first to colonize. They slowly break down the rock, forming the beginning of soil. Mosses follow, then small plants. Over decades and centuries, a complex ecosystem develops from the pioneer vegetation. Shrubs appear, then trees. After centuries, a mature forest has formed. The climax stage, relatively stable. Secondary succession occurs after disturbances, a fire, a storm, human intervention. The soil is already present, often with seeds and roots. Recovery is faster. Within years, meadows or shrubs can be established. Within decades, young forests. This self-regulation is remarkable. Ecosystems are resilient. They can recover from disturbances. But this resilience has limits. Disturbances that are too strong, too frequent, or too widespread can cause an ecosystem to tip into a new state from which it no longer recovers. Equilibrium is not a fixed state, but a process, a dance in which all participants react to one another. A living, breathing system. Humans are part of nature, part of ecosystems. But our impact is unprecedented. No other species has changed the Earth as profoundly as Homo sapiens. For most of our history, humans lived as hunters and gatherers. We were integrated into ecosystems, dependent on them, but not dominant. Our populations were small. Our tools were simple. Our footprint was light. About 10,000 years ago, agriculture began. Humans started to cultivate plants and domesticate animals. We actively reshaped ecosystems. Forests were cleared to make way for fields. Rivers were diverted for irrigation. Agriculture enabled larger, denser populations. Civilizations arose. Cities grew. The human impact on the environment intensified. With the Industrial Revolution, everything accelerated. Fossil fuels provided seemingly limitless energy. Machines replaced human and animal labor. Production increased exponentially, and with it, the environmental impact. Today, over 8 billion people live on Earth. We use about a quarter of the planet's total net primary production. We have altered half of the ice-free land surface for agriculture, cities, infrastructure. Our impacts are diverse. We extract resources, water, minerals, timber. We produce waste and pollution, plastics, chemicals, greenhouse gases. We destroy habitats through deforestation, urbanization, mining. The consequences are visible. Species are going extinct at an alarming rate. Habitats are shrinking and fragmenting. Seas are overfished, polluted, and acidifying. Soils are eroding. Freshwater reserves are being overexploited. Climate change, caused by our emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, is altering ecosystems globally. Temperatures are rising. Weather patterns are shifting. Sea levels are rising. Coral reefs are bleaching. Permafrost is thawing. The impacts are complex and cascade through ecosystems. But there are also positive developments. Increasing environmental awareness. Protected areas are being established. Laws regulate pollution. Sustainable practices are being developed and implemented. Reforestation and rewilding show that ecosystems can recover if we give them a chance. Some species that were on the brink of extinction have recovered thanks to conservation measures. We are beginning to understand that our well-being is inextricably linked to the health of ecosystems. Clean water, clean air, fertile soils, a stable climate. All these are ecosystem services that nature provides for free. Their value is immeasurable. The challenge of our time is to find a way to live on this planet, 8 billion people and more, without destroying the systems that keep us alive. It is possible, but it requires change. It requires wisdom. The protection of ecosystems is one of humanity's most urgent tasks. It's not just about preserving beautiful landscapes or charismatic species. It's about our own survival. Protected areas are an important tool. National parks, nature reserves, marine protected areas, places where nature has priority. Today, about 15% of the land area and 7% of the oceans are protected. The goal of many conservationists is 30% by 2030, the 30 by 30 initiative. But protected areas alone are not enough. Ecosystems do not end at political borders. Birds migrate. Fish swim. Seeds travel with the wind. Rivers flow. Pollution knows no boundaries. A holistic approach is necessary. Landscape planning that considers ecosystems as interconnected units. Corridors that connect protected areas, allowing animals to migrate and gene pools to mix. Sustainable use is just as important as protection. Most people do not live in protected areas. They depend on functioning ecosystems for their livelihood. Agriculture can be sustainable if it works with nature, not against it. Agroforestry combines trees with crops or livestock. The trees prevent erosion, store carbon, and provide habitat. The diversity makes the system more resilient. Regenerative agriculture goes even further. It aims to improve soil health, not just maintain it. Through practices like minimizing tillage, cover crops, and composting, organic matter is built up in the soil. Carbon is sequestered. Biodiversity increases. In cities, green infrastructure, parks, green roofs, urban trees can provide ecosystem services. They cool the air, absorb rainwater, and provide habitat for birds and insects. Cities do not have to be ecological deserts. Restoring degraded ecosystems is another important strategy. Rewilding rivers, rewetting peatlands, reforesting cleared lands. These projects can be remarkably successful. An inspiring example is the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park. They had been gone for 70 years. Without a top predator, the elk populations had exploded. They ate young trees and shrubs. Riparian vegetation disappeared. Streams eroded. 20 years after the wolves returned, the ecosystem had fundamentally changed. Elk became cautious again, avoiding open areas. Vegetation recovered. Beavers returned. Bird populations increased. Even the courses of the rivers stabilized. The return of one species had effects on the entire system, a trophic cascade. Education and awareness are fundamental. When people understand ecosystems, appreciate their beauty and complexity, they are more likely to protect them. Every individual can contribute through consumer choices, less meat, local and organic products, by reducing waste, especially plastic, by supporting environmental organizations, through political engagement for environmental protection laws. Small actions, carried out by many people, can have a big impact. If 1 million people reduce their ecological footprint by 1%, the overall effect is significant. Nature is resilient. If we give it space, it can recover. Forests grow back. Waters clean themselves. Species return. It is not too late. But time is running out. We have reached the end of our journey through the world of ecosystems. We have seen how everything is connected, from the smallest bacterium to the largest tree, from the deepest ocean to the highest layer of the atmosphere. Ecosystems are not just collections of species. They are living networks, dynamic systems in which energy flows and matter cycles. They regulate themselves, adapt, and evolve. We humans are part of this web. We are not separate from nature. We are nature. Our well-being depends on the well-being of ecosystems. The challenges are real. The loss of biodiversity, climate change, environmental destruction, they are serious. But solutions exist. Protected areas, sustainable practices, restoration, education. And above all, the will to change. Every breath you take connects you to the planet. The oxygen was produced by plants, somewhere in a forest or in the ocean. The water you drink has gone through an endless cycle, through clouds, rivers, roots, cells. You are made of stardust. The atoms in your body were forged in distant suns, billions of years ago. They became part of the earth. They circulated through countless organisms. Now, they are you. One day, they will be part of something else. This perspective can be comforting. You are part of something larger. You are connected. You are home. As you now settle into rest, drifting into sleep, remember, you are not alone. You are surrounded by life, part of an incredible, complex, beautiful network. The web of life supports you. Sleep well. Dream of green forests, vast oceans, endless savannas. Dream of a future where humans and nature live in harmony. Good night. Yendi.